Welcome to my Java programming video tutorial, where today we're going to create a text-based adventure game. This game will allow players to explore different rooms, collect items, and interact with various characters. So, if you're ready, let's dive right in. First, let's start by setting up our Java project. Open your favorite Java IDE, for example, IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse. Create a new project and name it Text Adventure Game. Next, we need to create a basic structure for our game. Let's create a new class called Game. This class will contain our main method and serve as the entry point for our game. In the main method, let's add some initial setup for our game. We can print a welcome message to the player and explain the basics of our adventure game. Now, to enable player interaction, we'll need to set up a scanner to read input from the player. Let's import the scanner class and instantiate it in our game class. We will also need a method to process commands from the player. Let's create a method called processCommand, which takes a string as input and handles various commands. Let's implement a loop in the main method to continuously read input from the player until they decide to quit the game. Let's pause here and review the main components we've put in place. We have the game class with a main method, a scanner for reading player input, and a way to process commands through the processCommand method. This forms the foundation of our text-based adventure game. Next, let's focus on creating rooms for our game. We can create a room class to represent different locations within the game. In the room class, we have fields for the room's description and exits to other rooms. The setExit method allows us to link rooms together, forming a navigable map within our game. Now, let's update our game class to create a few rooms and link them together. We can create a simple map with a start room and a room that leads to another room. We can modify the processCommand method to allow players to navigate to different rooms. For instance, if a player types Go East, we should check if the East exit exists and move the player to that room. It's now time to provide a way for players to look around in their current room. We can modify the command to respond to look with the description of the current room. With these changes, players can now navigate between rooms and look at their surroundings. Let's enhance the game by adding items that players can collect. In our item class, we define a name and description for each item. The next step is to add items to our rooms. We'll need to modify the room class accordingly. With this addition, we can now store items within rooms. Let's create items and add them to our rooms in the game class. We can also create a new command, take, to collect items. Now, when players are in the East room, they'll have the option to take the key. Let's also consider adding an inventory for the player to keep track of collected items. The inventory will allow players to hold their collected items. We'll update the take command to move items from rooms to the player's inventory. Next, let's implement a simple combat system in our game. We can create an enemy class and allow players to engage with it. First, let's create an enemy class. The enemy class allows us to create enemies with health points. To incorporate combat, we need to modify our room class to potentially include an enemy. We'll add a field for the enemy in the room class. Now, we can create an enemy in our game class and set it in a room. Players should then be able to engage the enemy through commands like attack. Let's update the processCommand method to handle cases where the enemy is present and check if they are defeated. Now we'll also add the capability for enemies to attack back. The player should lose health when attacked, so we need to create a health attribute in the game class as well. At this point, we have a functioning combat system where players can attack enemies and receive damage back. Let's summarize what we've accomplished so far. To recap, we've set up the project, created a main game class, built a room class for different locations, introduced items, implemented an inventory system, and even added enemy combat mechanics. We're now very close to completing our text-based adventure game. Next, we should enhance our game by allowing players to win condition or end the game. Define what needs to happen for a player to win. One option could be to find a specific item or defeat the final enemy. What if you want to allow players to save their progress and load it later? To do this, we could implement a simple serialization of the player's state. This method would save the current state of the game to a file, making it easy for players to resume later. It would require implementing serializable on the game class, as well as handling the player's state correctly. Finally, let's implement a help command to list all available commands and options for the player. This will serve as a guide for new players. And that's it. We've successfully created a text-based adventure game in Java from the ground up. You can expand on this basic structure by adding more features like puzzles, non-player characters, and a more complex story. Thank you for following along in this tutorial. If you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more programming tutorials. Don't hesitate to share your own versions of this adventure game or any additional features you've implemented. Happy coding, and see you next time.